Zigzag and One, a place where we honestly discuss how to embrace the zigs and the zags in our crazy lives. Running away is not an option. Living in defeat is not an option. Instead, learning how to keep moving forward is what we'll do together, one nugget of wisdom at a time. Your host is Melanie Brown. She's navigated a few zigs and zags in her life with the determination to never give up. Expect great stories and lots of laughs. Are you ready? Let's do it.
Hello, friends. I'm Melanie Brown, and thanks for joining me for this episode of the ZIGZAG and One podcast. Before today's guest jumped on our Zoom call to record, I had to get the fangirl out of my system. I absolutely love music because it speaks to my heart. And interviewing a well-known musician whom Jeff and I have followed for decades was honestly a bit of a surreal experience. You see, I was blessed with the opportunity to interview Mark Lee, who was the lead guitarist for the Christian rock band Third Day. Listen to this. While he was with Third Day, the band had 28 number one songs, sold over 7 million albums, won 4 Grammy Awards, 24 Gospel Music Awards, and an American Music Award. And the band was inducted in the Georgia Music Hall of Fame in 2009. Here's the deal, though. Outside of all those awards, Mark is a down-to-earth guy who loves Jesus and his family. And even though I had the fangirl thing going like crazy, he was so fun and easy to talk to. Here's what you need to know about Mark. Mark and his wife Stephanie have been married for 23 years and have 2 daughters. Third Day had their farewell tour in 2018, but Mark's 27-year music career didn't end there. He's still rocking the guitar as a solo artist, and I love that music too. He also published a memoir in 2017 called Hurt Road. Today, Mark and I chat about why so many of us feel such a deep connection to music and why music strengthens us when we face difficult seasons. And he shares what goes into writing songs that helps us connect with God. I am so excited for you to join my conversation with Mark Lee. I am so excited to spend time today with my second favorite guitarist, Mark Lee. Those who know me know my man is a guitarist, and Mark, sorry, but he's my favorite.
Totally understand. I'm honored to be on the list. Number 2, I'll take that. That's great.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many shows we've watched of Third Day over the years. And in fact, Jeff really taught me a lot about guitar and to appreciate the guitar and what it adds to the show by watching you. We would be at the shows and he would be pointing out, "Do you see that, baby? Do you see that? Did you see that, what he just did?" And so I learned a lot about guitar by watching you.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm honored to have been able to do that and be a small role in your musical education.
Well, and you have some awesome guitar skills, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's something, that I've been doing music since I was a little kid. And I feel like I was blessed to be in a position, in an environment where I could sort of learn on the job. We started as a band with Third Day. We were right out of high school and we could play our instruments, but I wouldn't say we were super proficient or anything, but we just, learned a little bit along the way. And it was just a really neat journey to be a part of.
Well, we have been fans for a very long time. And again, especially because of you. And Jeff, when we were at concerts, he would have his eyes laser focused on you and watching your skills. And so that's been great memories for both of us. And to be honest, we've probably seen 25 or more shows over the years. And I know that's not as many as some of the other fans, but for us, that's a lot because that probably ranks up with the group that we've seen the most. So And I'll tell you, when we were at concerts, I would look around and I would watch the band and I would sing my heart out. But what I also loved doing was watching all of the fans and how they
Mhm. Yeah.
interacted with you and how they were worshiping God as you led and the
Mhm.
band led. And I just have to say, it lifted me up tremendously to see all of those people connecting with the music and worshiping God. What was it like from your vantage point?
Honestly, what you're saying there, that was probably what really became what got me through the shows, what I looked forward to about doing concerts, because you get to a point where, a song like God of Wonders that we did, recorded that song pretty early in our career, and it became a song that we did pretty much every night for, 18 years or something like that, if I'm doing the math right. Every time we do a show, we do that song. So for me, like, it became a thing where it was so much more about the fans and what God was doing through the music to encourage people, really more than it was anything about me or the other guys on stage. As fun as that was, it's definitely fun to be a part of, something that's bigger than yourself, and, to interact with musicians and in a live environment like that. It's amazing. But to see what God is doing and to see how he's able to use the music, and people are able to use the music and connect, and just that kind of worship thing that happens, and that it's something really special happens when a bunch of people get together, all because we all love God, and we're joining together in worship. It's something that you really can't explain until you're a part of something like that. And so I was really honored to be, yes, I was one of the guys up on stage, but I was part of like this big audience. We were all worshiping God together. It was really amazing.
So, what would you say then is the connection between humanity and music?
I feel like music has this way of reaching past, we all have kind of our natural coping mechanisms, our natural defenses, to be able to just navigate through life. We have that, but music has a way of kind of sneaking past all that and just going straight to your heart. And I know for me, being a little kid, some of my very earliest memories were, I had a little record player in my bedroom, and I'd play, like my dad's country music collection and listen to some of that stuff. And then my parents started buying me and my brother records and listening to those. And just some of my earliest memories and those experiences of music and how powerful, that was. And so for me, I kind of learned, I'd say when I was maybe about 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old, something like that. I started playing violin when I was really young, and I had an opportunity. I was at a family function, and my uncle had a violin, and hey, Mark, why don't you play us a song? And so I played a song, and just to see the reaction of everybody at that event, how everybody gathered around and started asking if I knew how to play different songs, and everybody was smiling. I mean, I at a very early age realized that connection that music is able to make with people that just doesn't happen in a lot of other ways.
And that's a great segue into my next question, because why do you think that music lifts us up when times are good and soothes us or ministers to us when we're going through tough times, or zigzags?
I think just because music, it just becomes just a part of the fabric of our life, and just something again about that way music is able to reach us on that heart level, on that subconscious kind of level, so that, a lot of times, I know this happens to me a lot, where I just had this happen like yesterday. I heard this song. My wife was listening to this like playlist, and it was a bunch of like 80s like ballads. And so this song came on that I literally had not heard in probably since back then. And I was like instantly transported to being in like middle school and like the things that I was thinking about. So I think that because music just becomes part of that fabric of our lives, that when we are going through difficult times, it's something that we can lean on to help us get through. And then I feel like also when we're going through a maybe easier season of life, if that's possible, then music can be something that we can use to encourage other people. I put a book out a couple years ago, and I'm you talk about zigzagging. I'm kind of zigzagging a little bit with the conversation, but I put a book
That's
out.
Okay.
And one of the big things that I talk about in the book are, I call them landmarks, where as we're navigating through life, and it's kind of different for everybody based on our talents and our experiences, but we have all these things in our lives that when we're going through a difficult time, it's something that we can lean on. When we're going through a better time, it kind of presents itself as a talent that you're able to share with other people. And I feel like music, for most people, I feel like music can be considered one of those landmarks that we're able to use to navigate through life.
I would agree with that 100%, especially about the 80s music. I tell you, it takes me right back to high school, and
Yeah.
I can visualize who I was with, what we were doing, and how I felt, whether I was angry or joyful. And I that's what music does for me, definitely. So speaking of how it transports you back to different periods, I remember Third Day doing an early release of Cry Out to Jesus right after the Hurricane Katrina. And y'all released it early because the lyrics of that song were so incredibly powerful. And I know you probably heard hundreds of stories afterwards how that impacted people. Can you share a few examples?
Sure. Yeah. I distinctly remember that time. It was, and you're totally right. We put the song out a little bit early, and, this was back in the iTunes days. And so we were like, instead of having people pay us for downloading the track, we're going to give the track away for free and encourage people to donate. I think we did a partnership with World Vision or something like that to raise funds to help out with Hurricane Katrina. And I didn't even really think about it at the time that through that, people were going to have access to this song early. And it really was neat to see. And actually, the song got picked up and played on some mainstream radio stations. And it was kind of a neat little lead in there. But yeah, to see how that song impacted people for sure. And there's one story in particular. And we didn't hear about this until many years later. But there was a guy who was, we got to meet his parents, but there was a guy who was living up in New Jersey, and he was just going through a really dark time and had decided that he was going to end his life. And so he had this whole plan that he was going to fall through. He drove out into the woods, but he decided before he ended his life, he was going to turn the radio on. Well, because he's out in the woods in the middle of nowhere, he turns the radio on, and he flips through the stations. All he can pick up is this Christian station. So he flips through the stations again. All he can pick up is the Christian station. So he's like, well, fine, I guess I'll listen to this. Well, it so happened to be that Cry Out to Jesus was the song that was playing on the radio at that point in time. And so this guy ended up listening to that song, listening to the lyrics, and he decided, not to end his life. And so that's just one small example of how the music and that song in particular can reach out to people. And we, from hearing that story from this young man's parents, we took that idea, and it became like the basis for another song called "I Need a Miracle" that was on an album a couple years later. So, but yeah, that's just one example of so many where that song was able to touch people. It's a really neat thing to be a part of.
And I'm thinking through how your words, the lyrics, the music tugged on that man's heart. How does that impact you, knowing that you had a part in that?
It's on a very simple, basic level. It's really humbling, because I feel like when you see something like that happen, that, I've never met this guy before in my life. When Third Day, when we're in the studio, when we're working on a song, we have a certain thing that we're thinking about, and I always hesitate when somebody's like, well, what's this song about? I want the song to be about whatever it is for the person listening to it at the time. So sometimes I almost hesitate because I love to hear people talk about how songs are able to impact them. So we have, our certain situation and what we're thinking about as we're writing and recording a song, but then to see how, somebody at a completely different time, like turns on the radio and hears the song and God is able to use the music. It's just a really humbling thing and an honor really to be a part of something like that.
I think it would be too, especially how it is impacting other people's lives in such dramatic ways. So I know that many of the Third Day songs mention going through struggles and leaning on Jesus during those times. And you were saying that not always you have a specific thing in mind, but where does the inspiration come when you guys were sitting down and writing songs? Was it based on events that were happening in the world, or maybe events that were happening in the band members' lives? Where did y'all get your inspiration from?
I would say it's all of those things. I can say specifically with Cry Out to Jesus and with the Wherever You Are album, we were getting to a place where, we weren't super young anymore. We were kind of in our 30s. All of us were married and had kids, and we were just sharing, all of the experiences that we were going through, as we're, even before we went into the studio, as we're on the road together, and we would always be deliberate about having Bible studies and, spending time in the Word together before we go on stage. And so as we were just kind of doing life together and sharing some of these experiences, those informed as we were writing that record. I know specifically with Cry Out to Jesus, there was a family that lives not far from where Mac and myself live, outside of Atlanta, that there's just a tragic experience where a young boy passed away in an accident. And so as Mac was kind of sharing the news with us, and we were all praying for that family, that was like kind of the very beginnings of Cry Out to Jesus. That first line for anybody that's lost someone they love, or exactly what it says. That was like kind of the beginnings of that. And then it just sort of, went on from there. So that's usually the inspiration for us is either something we read, maybe specifically a Bible passage that we read, during our devotional time, or it could be just a conversation, that we have with somebody else, or it could be, an experience like that. So it happened in all different kinds of ways. But it's really neat when it does happen. Sometimes, and I think Cry Out to Jesus is an example of that, where you almost just have this idea, and we just like sort of get out of the way and almost let the song write itself. That was one of those cases.
That's incredible to think about how our lives can turn into worship. And I know there are so many verses in the Bible that talk about how we should worship in song. And I'm a writer, and I love to write stories about women who are overcomers. But I don't feel equipped to write songs of worship, even though it calls us to sing songs of worship. So I am thankful for groups like yours and others who are out there writing those songs, because I'm telling you, as a fan, we all need that. We need those songs. We need to be able to sing them in our cars really loud where no one else can hear our terrible voices, and only God can, because he loves our voice and loves our worship. So I thank you for that. Tell me about what went into the song When the Rain Comes.
Okay, so that was one. It's interesting because Third Day recorded it on our Come Together album, which was, I think, our fourth, maybe fifth album. You kind of lose count after a while. So we recorded it a long time ago. I was in my 20s then, and if somebody had said, "Mark, what's this song about?" I would have been like, "I don't know." Sometimes that'll happen where, and this was the case with this song, where I had just the musical idea and this very simple little guitar line that I was playing, and it just sounded like rain. Just it evoked like this. Okay, the rain's falling. Okay, what does that mean? And so I just kind of took that idea of like, okay, well, rain can be like an analogy for going through a dark season in your life. So wrote the song. And then many years go by, I decided to re-record the song for my first solo EP a couple years ago. And through that process of recording the song, I kind of, looked at the lyrics again. And then as a 40-something-year-old person, I go, "Oh, I know what that song is about." Absolutely. It's this kind of what I was hitting on a little bit earlier, where it's not a question of if difficult seasons are going to come our way, but when difficult seasons come our way. For us to not, because a lot of times we have this pride where we almost don't want to let other people help us.
Yes.
And so this is really an encouragement to somebody that's going through a dark time in their life, to let the people around you help you through that time. I remember when my father passed away when I was in high school, had so many people say things, and a lot of it is it's a really awkward time. People don't know what to say, but people say things like, hey, if there's anything I can do, let me know. And, you're kind of like, yeah, okay, thanks. But I just, looking back on that time, I was like, man, I really wish I had taken people up on that more than I did. And so this is something I've got to where I say from stage quite a bit is, hey, if you're going through a season like that and somebody says, hey, let me know if there's anything I can do, take them up on it, because it's a great opportunity for you to lean on other people as you go through a difficult season. But also it's a great opportunity for that person, because as we do that, as we lift each other up, we're really being a great example of the body of Christ for other people on the outside. And it's just a really neat thing. And it's a real honor that you can give somebody to let them help you out. There's the saying I've heard a lot of older people say this when I was a kid, don't block a blessing. So if somebody is wanting to help you out through a time, let them do that. It's a great honor for them also.
Well, and I agree with you on that, because I know that when I have been given the opportunity to help someone, I'm thinking of a friend of mine who had a health issue just recently, and I just went over and spent a couple of hours with her, and she sent me a text later and said, that just did my heart a world of good. And I really didn't do anything beyond just be there. And that's what she needed. And it just filled me with joy knowing that I could do something to actually help her. So I agree with that, letting people know what it is that you need when you're struggling.
Absolutely. And I mean, here's an example that literally just happened for me. So we had a good friend of mine just passed away earlier this week. And, during this crazy coronavirus season that we've been living through, they weren't able to really do a memorial service. So they did this, and I don't know whose idea was it to put this together, but just a bunch of their friends and family drove by the house and did this little, not exactly impromptu, but almost impromptu, little memorial thing with people driving by and had signs and flowers and balloons and waved at them and everything. Well, my wife and I got there a little bit early, and we had kind of got there early to just sort of help out and maybe point cars where they're able to go. Well, we're so quickly overwhelmed with how many cars got there. I ended up having to jump out in the middle of the road, and I'm directing traffic and stuff. And I didn't even really think about it. I just was like, okay, here's something that needs to be done. I'll just jump in and do it. And then afterwards, people saying things like, hey, Mark, thanks so much for helping out with this. And I was, and I'm sure you're this way. If you help somebody out, you're thinking, oh, well, I didn't even really think that it was anything to be thanked for. It was just oh, here's something that needed to be done, and I'll just jump in and do it. So I think if we can approach life with that kind of mindset of just looking for ways and looking for opportunities where we can jump in and help people out, and then knowing that other people are doing the same thing, we're able to do that and lift each other up. And it's just a really neat thing when it happens that way.
That's what the body of Christ is supposed to be. And
Absolutely.
Not just to other believers, but to unbelievers too, because they can see us serving and loving others through us doing things like that. And I think that is just fantastic. So you've mentioned your book. If you would tell me the name of the book and tell me just a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is called Hurt Road. It came out in 2017, so a little over 2 years ago. And it's my memoir. The main thing that happens, and I'm not really giving much away because this happens very first page of the book, but I got hit by a truck when I was 14 years old selling donuts for my church youth group. And so I took that event because it was really significant in my life, because I had been kind of on this path of where I was a believer at the time. I became a Christian when I was a really young kid. I was about 9 years old, I think. But during this season, I think a lot of people do this while they're in high school. They go, you know what, God, you got so many other things going on. I'm going to let you take care of the big things. I'll handle my own life and my own problems. Not that I really turned my back on God at all during that time, but I just was like, that was what my 14-year-old mind was thinking, God, you got so many other big things to deal with. I'll just kind of handle things on my own. Well, that experience of getting hit by the truck kind of took me off of the path that I'd been on before, which was, nothing wrong with it, but it was a path of okay, I want to finish high school. I want to go to college. I want to get a good job. I want to get married. Nothing wrong with any of those things, but I didn't really have God in my plans at all. And so for me, it took getting hit by the truck and all of those experiences that happened after that, for God to take me off of the smaller plan that I had for myself, and for him to put me on this other path, this other plan, which at the beginning was really weird and different. I didn't really understand it. I was kind of confused. I was kind of, to be 100% honest, I was kind of angry that I had, missed a lot of school. I'm watching my friends live their lives, and I feel like my life is kind of on hold. But during that time, I started playing guitar, got really serious about music. I started, not long after that, I started performing, kind of not professionally, but, getting up on stage and playing in bands and things like that. And so Third Day was formed out of that. And, here we are 20, however many years later, and all the amazing things that God did through the band. And none of those things would have happened had I not had that experience of getting hit by the truck. So that's kind of just giving you the real quick version of the book. But yeah, outside of that, I also just talk about, like, as I've grown up and got a few years behind me, just some of the lessons that I've learned. And hopefully, somebody that's younger can read the book and go, oh, so Mark tried to do that and it didn't work. Maybe I'll just skip all that and I'll just do things the right way. So I'm hoping people can read the book, read their story into mine, and be encouraged by it.
Well, I have to tell you, it sounds a whole lot like an overcomer story. And I am all about overcomer stories, especially about what we learn from those things. And especially you saying how none of the Third Day stuff would have happened had that not occurred. And I find that to be true in so many of the overcomers that I interview, is whatever they have gone through, whether it's a health issue or abuse or addiction or any number of things, that was a catalyst for launching them into something that God had for them. And no, you don't want to go through tough times just to say I've gone through tough times. But sometimes, and oftentimes, those are the things that launch us into our passion and purpose. And
absolutely. Yeah. And I've said this from stage quite a bit, but I don't totally know the theology behind this, but I don't personally believe that God makes bad things happen in our lives, but I know that he can, because he's done it for me. I know he can use bad things that happen to us for his good. And if we can just sort of put ourselves in the position to allow God to do a work in our lives and through us, then we can see some really amazing things happen as a result.
I am total agreement of all of those words.
Yeah.
So tell me, what else as a solo artist you've been up to?
So I put the book out, and I am at the very early stages of figuring out what the next book is going to be. So I'll be writing that, putting it out. Hopefully it'll come out next year. Sometimes the book world, it goes a little bit slower than we would like. So hopefully next year, maybe a little bit later than that. So starting a book, and then I am also in the process of recording a hymns album.
Oh, nice.
Later this year. Yeah. So I feel like, I can't remember who I was talking about this with the other day, but, feel like as a musician, like everybody does a Christmas album. But I feel like as a Christian artist, I feel like it's an important kind of rite of passage to, at some point in your career, do a hymns album. Because I love worship music. It's been a big part of my life. It's been a big part of Third Day in our career. But some of my, we were talking about music and the impact that it can have in your life. Some of my earliest, fondest memories are standing, in the pews at church and helping my mom or my grandfather hold up a hymnal and singing along to some of the old hymns like Trust and Obey and Old Rugged Cross and some of those things like that. So I'm really excited about just this chance that I have now to record some of my favorite hymns. I originally had like kind of a thought of, there's one particular hymnal that came out like back in the 50s. And a lot of people just call it like the Red Book hymnal.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So originally I was going to just record songs from that. And I still will do quite a few from that. But what I found is like all of those songs, and I love them, they all have this same kind of sound to it. And I kind of feel like after a while, it's like all going to run in together and sound like just one song. So I've kind of expanded it a little bit, because I want to get some songs like Be Thou My Vision is one that was a really big song for me growing up. And I just love the message of that song. And it has this sort of like Irish Celtic kind of feel to it. So I'm trying to find some other songs that'll kind of just from a musical standpoint and even from a lyrical standpoint, just give it like a different kind of texture. So I've really just enjoyed the last few weeks of just going through and listening to a lot of different hymns that I maybe haven't listened to in years and trying to figure out how those all will work together. So be on the lookout for that. It'll be coming out sometime later this year.
Well, I look forward to that because I agree. There are some hymns from my childhood that really meaningful. And again, like we were talking about earlier, how it brings back memories. Just singing those songs and thinking about the words, it takes me back to certain periods of my life and what I was going through and how those songs ministered to me.
Absolutely. And I think too, and even going like beyond ourselves as individuals, but if you think about these hymns and how they've been sung, a lot of them for 100 years or hundreds of years, how when we sing some of these songs, we're joining in unison with all the believers that have come before us. And when you kind of think about it, it's a really neat thing to be a part of.
I like thinking about it like that. I'll have to chew on that a little bit. Yeah. That's a neat idea. So it's time for us to wrap up the show. So if you could tell me what your one takeaway is for the listeners.
Absolutely. Yes. I mentioned this before, but I genuinely believe that all of us will at some point in our lives go through a difficult season. We'll go through a dark time. It's not a question of if that's going to happen, but when that happens. And for us to not be afraid to lean on our faith during that time, lean on our relationship with God, and then as part of that, for us to lean on each other and recognize that as an opportunity for us, whether we're the one going through the difficult time or if we're friends and family of somebody that's going through a difficult season, it's an opportunity for us to come together as the body of Christ and be there for each other, lift each other up, and also be a light and an example to the rest of the world around us.
I love it. That's fantastic. Mark, I cannot thank you enough for joining me today. I'm begging you to keep using that gift of your music because I know it encourages me. I know it has encouraged lots of people that I know and millions of people around the world. So please keep making that music. Please keep sharing your talents. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for the encouragement. I will definitely do that.
Uh-oh, somebody's trying to reach you.
Yeah, I think it was my daughter calling, so I'll have to call her back in just a minute. Which she's upstairs. I don't know why she can't just walk down here and say, "Hey, Daddy," but that's how it is.
Being a teenager.
Totally, yeah.
So as we finish today, remember that when life zigs and zags, and Mark told you, and I'm telling you, it's going to happen. You know it will. He says, and I agree, we need to lean on God and we need to lean on each other. Wow, friends, I loved chatting with Mark. Music is a part of my daily life, but it is most comforting and life-giving when I'm struggling. How about you? Do you find that music helps you during the difficult seasons? If you're in a difficult season now, I encourage you to listen to music that encourages you and strengthens you and speaks to your heart. Follow Mark on Facebook and learn more about his music and join in when he does a weekly Facebook Live from the bookshelf. You get a really sneak peek into who Mark is and the music that he's passionate about. He plays songs and chats about all kinds of things, including music. Also, check out Mark at marklee.me to find out where he's performing and the latest on his music releases. Thanks so much for joining me today. Be looking for another episode coming out this month about why music lifts us up in good times and sustains us when life zigs and zags. Until then, keep moving forward.